Canadian Forces Intelligence Command. My work was never public. It was quiet, precise, hidden behind firewalls and secure servers deep beneath Ottawa's defense headquarters. I hunted digital threats before they reached headlines. I stopped breaches before they turned into disasters. But nothing, not foreign espionage, not cyber terrorism, not even working through blackouts during Arctic winters, prepared me for what I faced last spring, in a courtroom in Halifax. I wore my full dress uniform, not out of pride, but out of duty. My father's estate was supposed to be simple. He was clear in his will. But my family had other plans. They didn't just want the money, they wanted the story rewritten. My younger sister Rachel sat stiffly beside her husband, lips pursed like she'd swallowed her own conscience. My mother avoided my gaze, eyes focused on the polished floor. The family lawyer stood with feigned regret, calling me unstable, claiming years of service had left me emotionally compromised. She said I manipulated our father while on bereavement leave, that I coerced signatures, that I used my title as leverage. I stayed silent. I'd spent decades listening more than speaking. They twisted my service, my loyalty, into something shameful. Rachel said I was cold. Her husband said I scared him. My mother whispered, we only wanted to help her. Let them talk, I thought. Let them build their wall of lies. When the judge finally turned to me and asked if I had anything to submit, I rose. My heels echoed sharply, just like they had down metal hallways in Candor. I opened my leather case and handed him a single sheet of paper. Your Honor, I said. With your permission, I believe this document warrants review. He nodded, slid on his glasses and began to read. Line by line, and the room began to change. His brow furrowed, then lifted. His voice, calm but cutting, sliced through the courtroom like a blade. Seal the room. No one leaves. Gasps. Chairs shifted. Confusion rippled like a wave. My mother's face drained of color. Rachel looked at me. No smugness this time, only dawning fear. Her husband gripped her wrist. The bailiff stiffened as two agents entered from the rear. Federal investigators. Efficient, wordless, precise. I stood motionless. Because this wasn't revenge. This was justice. And I had waited too long to let it slip past. It began in silence the way most betrayals do. A gray Monday morning in March. My hardwood floor cold under bare feet as I sipped coffee and skimmed emails on my phone. One subject line caught my eye. Veterans Compensation Disbursement Confirmed. Morgan Case ID 117Z. Strange. I hadn't applied for anything. My benefits were untouched, my modest pension intact. My 2-story cottage near Bedford Basin was mortgage-free. I lived simply. Curious, I tapped the message. My heart didn't race. It stilled. My name. My CFID number. Deployment logs. A $42,000 0-cent relief deposit. Sent to a bank account I didn't recognize. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message I wasn't supposed to see. One encrypted call later, a friend in the Department of Public Accounts sent me what I needed. A ledger, a paper trail. 3 months prior, the title to my late father's estate, our family home in downtown Halifax, had been quietly signed over to a numbered company. 501,792 NBIDEL. The name sounded familiar. It was the so-called startup Rachel's husband bragged about over Christmas 2 years ago, some property flipping scheme he swore would make them millionaires. Back then, I dismissed it. Just another cocktail napkin venture with no staying power. But this one stuck. It now owned everything I'd protected, including the house I'd kept afloat when Dad got sick. I'd paid the final mortgage balance myself, anonymously. No ceremony, no applause. Now my name was erased. His was on everything. That night, I drove to the house. The lights glowed warmly through the windows. And I knocked, deed in hand. "What is this?" I asked, holding the deed in front of Rachel's husband. He barely looked up. "Just a bit of legal housekeeping," he said. "Streamlining for tax purposes." My name was gone. "Everything's clean," he added with a shrug. "You don't live here anymore. Do you really need to be on anything?" "I helped pay for this house." "Exactly," he said, smiling like it was a courtroom win. "Helped. Past tense." I turned to my mother. She was curled in her usual armchair, a crossword in her lap, pen poised mid-air. "Did you know about this?" She hesitated. "Just enough. He explained it to me," she murmured. "Said it was about preserving things. For the family." I narrowed my eyes. "You mean his family?" No one answered. Not even Rachel, who glanced away with the air of someone too polite to intervene in a stranger's tantrum. I looked down at the paper that once meant something, my contribution, my care, my legacy, and saw only silence. I left without a word, passed the hall mirror by the front door, saw myself, tight jaw, unblinking eyes, breath held somewhere deep in my chest. That night, I lay on the guest bed in my own former home, light from the street pooling through the blinds. I opened a fresh notebook, not for grief, not for reflection. The records. Names, dates, transaction logs, routing numbers, corporate links. This wasn't about closure. It was about building a case. They thought they'd written the last line. They had no idea I was just beginning the prologue. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Heavy. The kind of heavy that warns you something inside is going to hurt. Celeste Morgan printed in bold. No title, no rank, just civilian ink. Return address, Morgan Family Advisory Board, Bentham and Lorne, LLP, Halifax. I opened it. The top sheet bore the header, Plaintiff, Rachel Morgan, Defendant, Celeste Morgan, Allegations, Misuse of Assets, Emotional Harm, Coercive Influence. I stared at it for a long time. They were suing me. Rachel, my own sister. If you've ever been blindsided by the people who were supposed to protect you, stay with me, because this story is far from over. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next when truth finally steps into the light. Rachel. And behind her? My mother. The rest of the legal filing laid it out with surgical precision. They alleged that during my compassionate leave from a tour in Eastern Europe, I had manipulated our aging parents into handing over power of attorney and fiduciary control of the Morgan Family Trust, a trust my father established decades earlier. A trust I hadn't even touched, one I barely remembered existed. They claimed I used my rank, my presence, my discipline, as intimidation, that I confused my mother into signing documents she didn't understand. The phrasing was cold, legal, yes, but sharpened to wound. Every sentence distorted the truth. My uniform, once a symbol of duty, was now framed as a weapon. By noon, local media had the story. By dinner time, it hit Atlantic Regional News. Photos of me in dress uniform, none smiling. One mid-briefing, my expression steely. Captions like, Decor-decorated officer under family fire. Colonel Morgan, hero or manipulator? I turned off the TV, but the headlines echoed everywhere. My phone lit up with texts from former colleagues, some supportive, others silent. Not the silence of neutrality, the kind that backs away. Even Canadian Forces Command responded. A measured message from my superior recommended a temporary leave to address domestic legal complexities. I didn't protest. I needed time. Not to wallow. To act. I gathered every financial record I could get access to legally, personal, family, estate. Then I hired a forensic accountant, discreet, no paper trail. Brought in 2 analysts, both veterans, both loyal only to the facts. We built a timeline, transaction logs, email chains, account histories, and a pattern emerged. 3 months before the lawsuit, a large withdrawal, just under federal oversight limits. The funds moved through shell accounts, temp investments, and quietly reappeared in a nonprofit, a mental health foundation founded by Rachel's husband. Her name was on everything. Rachel's husband's company, Ledgeview Analytics, appeared too, buried across financial ledgers and service invoices, listed under consulting fees, data optimization, and digital infrastructure support. But it didn't stop there. They were moving money. Worse, they were doing it through veteran assistance initiatives. Real names, names I knew. Men and women I had served beside. Some still alive, some long gone. 8 confirmed, all exploited. At first, I assumed it was identity theft. But this wasn't chaotic or opportunistic. It was deliberate, organized. I remembered Rachel's voice that night in the living room, soft and syrupy. "You've been under so much pressure lately, Celeste. Maybe you're just overanalyzing things." She didn't think I'd look twice. She didn't think I could hear the silence behind her words, but she forgot. I didn't survive 2 decades in counterintelligence by missing patterns. This wasn't family drama. This was federal crime, and she just walked it into the open. The deeper I went, the colder it got. The first red flag came in a federal grant application submitted through the Haven Collective, Rachel's so-called wellness nonprofit. It was signed by Oliver P. Grant. Except, Oliver had died in 2012. I'd held the flag at his funeral. He was a medic who pulled 3 soldiers from a burning Humvee in Kandahar, only to bleed out en route to evac. But now his name was listed as a beneficiary of PTSD treatment funds. He wasn't alone. More names surfaced. Veterans, both deceased and alive, their personal data scraped and repurposed without consent. And each record linked back to a larger web, spoofed IP addresses, forged digital signatures, cloned routing accounts, a system built by someone who knew how to hide in plain sight. They weren't just committing fraud. They were channeling federal aid into offshore accounts, disguised as operational expenses routed through Ledgeview Analytics. Then I saw it. A payment labeled Consulting Services, wired to Virex Holdings, a Cayman-based firm. The name hit me hard. I'd seen it once, years ago, in a classified cyber espionage file. Nothing proven. Until now, when it showed up in my family's records. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew what came next. I sat alone in the dark, the pale glow of my laptop casting shadows across the kitchen walls. Files were open in every window. Tax documents, server access logs, decrypted email chains, grant disbursement reports. One attachment caught my attention. An outgoing message Rachel had sent to a foreign partner, linked to the Haven Collective. The encryption was weak, sloppy. I decrypted it in under 10 minutes. Inside, buried in metadata, was a chilling line of text. Package secured, clearance updates pending, awaiting extraction. My breath caught. Package, clearance, extraction. This wasn't about stolen funds anymore. It wasn't even about my reputation. They were exploiting me. My deployment history, my government access, my classified credentials. I was the cover. They had used my real security footprint to shield fake activity. Every stolen dollar wore my medals. Every breach walked through doors only I should have known existed. For the first time in a long time, I felt panic clawing up from my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was espionage. And they never thought I'd find it. The next morning, I made contact. Carefully. 2 former colleagues. One from Canadian Signals Intelligence, one from NATO's Cyber Threat Division. I told them just enough. We met in a borrowed cabin off a logging road 2 hours north of Lunenburg. No electronics, no signals, just data, and eyes that still understood the stakes. I laid out everything. They listened in silence. Then Eli, who once briefed Parliament on foreign interference cases, finally spoke. "This isn't just dirty money," he said. "It's access. They're selling entry." I nodded. I already knew. Not documents. Gateways. Backdoors into systems built to remain sealed. For weeks, I'd told myself this was still about family. But it wasn't. It was about national security, and if I didn't act, I was part of it. That night, I sat by the window and stared into the streetlights flickering below. The most dangerous battlefield I'd ever stood on? It wasn't a war zone. It was my own family, and I asked them to meet me at the house. Not Rachel, just the two people who raised me. My mother opened the door, her expression unreadable. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, rigid, silent. We hadn't spoken since the filing, since the headlines, since the lies had spread like frost over glass, thin, cold, distorting everything beneath. They led me to the living room like I was a polite visitor, not their daughter. I set the folder gently on the table between us. I know, I said, voice steady. About the identity fraud, the numbered companies, the clearance data passed through offshore shells. I know you both signed off. Neither moved. No surprise. No guilt. I just want to ask one thing, I continued. Did either of you ever stop to think what you were doing to me? My mother looked down at her lap, fingers twitching slightly. My father stared through the frost-blurred window. You were always gone, my mother said, even before the forces. Always somewhere else. Rachel stayed, my father added flatly. She cared. She showed up. I felt the words land, sharp and deliberate. She exploited you, I said, sharper. She used your names, your trust, and you handed her the keys. My father's voice was slow, as if rehearsed. Sometimes you stand with the child who stays. That silence afterward, it felt like exile. I picked up the folder. Then you've made your choice, I said. Now I'll make mine. They didn't stop me. Didn't say another word. Outside, the cold sliced across my skin. I drove back in silence. Back to my apartment, back to the one place they hadn't touched. That night, I encrypted the master file. Every account. Every chain, every name. Then I activated a dormant line. It's time. The reply came in under an hour. By sunrise, I was in an empty warehouse near Dartmouth, laptops glowing. Anna. Cole. Miles. Veterans. Truth seekers. We built it all, document by document, line by line. They thought I was isolated. That silence meant surrender. They forgot something vital. I'm a soldier, and soldiers don't walk into battle empty-handed. The day of the hearing, I wore my uniform, not as armor, but as proof. Every inch of that moment had been earned. Rachel sat across the courtroom, flanked by her husband and their legal team. She didn't look at me. My parents sat just behind them, expressions unreadable. Rachel wore a muted gray blazer and a face painted with rehearsed concern. Their lawyer spoke with precision, her tone crisp and cool, describing me as unstable, emotionally compromised, dangerous after decades in uniform. Deployments were spun as abandonment. Silence became secrecy. When Rachel took the stand, she called me paranoid, unreachable, cold. She even teared up, right on cue. The judge listened quietly, and I let them talk. When it was my turn, I didn't rebut. I didn't defend my name. I walked slowly to the bench, reached into my case, and pulled out one document. Your Honor, I said clearly, this is my only submission. He took it, adjusting his glasses. First line, second, third. By the fourth, his brow furrowed. Seal the room, he said. No one leaves. The room shifted, tense and electric. The bailiff locked the doors. Rachel stiffened. Her husband's face drained of color. Then they came. Federal agents. Silent, direct, without warning they moved. Straight to Rachel and her husband. The lies unraveled with every footstep. Handcuffs clicked in the fluorescent light. The judge read aloud the charges. Fraud, identity theft, breach of national security. Rachel's husband didn't resist. Sheet mascara streaked across her cheeks. My parents said nothing. As they passed me, her husband whispered, they pushed me, and didn't answer because I believed him. But I didn't excuse him. Later, I requested protection orders for every veteran named in the breach. The judge granted them without pause. I gave no interview, no cameras, no applause. I went home. That night, beneath the glow of my desk lamp, I filed the Charter for Honor Trace, a foundation to protect veterans from digital exploitation. No ribbon cutting, just purpose. Weeks later, I received a letter, handwritten, from a widow in Ontario. We thought no one would fight for us. Then you did. I held the letter in quiet stillness. Not silence born of pain, but of peace. Peace I had built with my own hands. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, leave a comment. Tell me what part hit home. Tell me how you kept going. Because stories like ours deserve to be seen, heard, and remembered. And your voice matters here.